Hello, hello. How are we doing tonight, guys? Hello, 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 hello. I'm doing great, thank you. A little tired. I am not gonna lie, a little tired. Was a big day, but can never be mad after a win, right? Actually, I don't think it's possible to be mad after you've made money in a day, until proven otherwise, right? We had a very weird day, I guess, but with precise frameworks. So we'll run through them. First of all, I do want to give a quick recap of what we saw during this week's outlook, right? We were looking at a retracement to our first discount and efficiency. What range were we looking at? I think we were referring to this range in this case, so the larger range. And we had our first discount and efficiency, which were these equal lows. Now, we did take them out on Thursday last week, but we revisited them this week with a nice, very nice, actually, new week opening gap. You know what? I haven't used those in a while, so let's just showcase it with the indicator. So nice new week opening gap right there. Definitely some nice rebalance early on Monday. And then going into Tuesday, we opened above previous week's high, and we're ready to dive lower. Just showcasing the frameworks that were available there. But truly what we saw, let me just go in replay mode here so we don't see the current day's price action. But clearly we did expand quite aggressively higher. We had a very nice, though, run higher on Monday, followed by this morning, I guess. Well, more like last night for me, depending on your time zone for sure. Sweep data high and low, as you talked about Sunday. Yes, that is what I'm going to be talking about next, because last week's outlook, I talked about how I was going to be interacting with CPI, and it did exactly what we'd be looking for. But overall, we had a very nice move to the upside. On days like this, where it's back and forth, you need a reason, right? These are what we call reversal days, or you can call them consolidation days in this case, because we actually did not reach all the way down to the current day's low in the case of NASDAQ. But on ES, as we can see, it was definitely a full reversal. So short-term low here, once previous week high is taken, I'm going to be honest here, I don't have a reason to long anymore. Like, what reason could there be for me to look at a long after my all-time objective has been met, right? And I discussed this during the review, right? During the outlook, that I was going to be looking for retracement. Now, after we form equal lows at previous week low, we just form a beautiful framework to look for a reversal. It's still very early to just consider a reversal right after taking previous week's high. But in this case, I would definitely consider taking a trade off of that move. And we had additional confluences, like, for example, a nice London framework, right? So we took out London high after 5 a.m., but before 9:30, and we left London lows open for 9:30 to go target. So you had a nice London framework telling you to go short. Also, we had our CPI news, right? Which was when at 8:30. Let me find that guy. Right at 8:30 right here. What did we do? We expanded higher. Now, usually I like to trade onside with CPI, but that's what we're going to talk about, what Justin just mentioned. But we had our London framework telling us we can go lower. We reached a higher time frame objective. We have a lot of reasons to go short in a case like this. We actually removed the new week opening gap. It was more useful, definitely, on Monday. But just right here, overall, very beautiful framework, if I can say it like that. And we also had SMT, which is important to notice, right at the open. So on our 9:30 candle, we had SMT on the highs, just to give you an additional confirmation to look for shorts. So definitely a very nice framework, even though technically the day's price action was a little back and forth in this case. Now, what Justin was talking about is I had the question asked during this week's outlook. What was it? There we go. Alex said, we can actually find it just above, But he says the CPI news at 8:30 usually frame the impulsion or a fake move the other way. So we discussed with details how I personally interact with CPI. And it's very simple. I'll actually use the range form from CPI, and I'll either look for continuation or a rate of data high to data low. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to look at the 15 minutes after the news. So from 8:30 to 8:45, I'm going to use the high of that range and the low of that range. And I'm going to create a framework with that. So if we sweep the high and we fail to displace higher, for example, forming SMT after taking it out, well, I'm going to look to go target the lows. Look for a retracement inside that CPI fair value gap, which is already, for me, a very important point of interest. So we had a very beautiful framework of that. Where can I find your breaker, Indy? It's part of our statistics, Justin, which you do have, if I am not mistaken. You can go claim it directly on our WAP. If you have trouble finding it, I'll gladly drop the link, but you can just head over to official links and you can reach it from there. And hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, if you have any questions or you can't find it, just let me know and I'll help you out. But we had our SMT, as we can see here. We had a clear framework to go short off the news, off of London as well, right? Just overall overwhelming statistical probabilities that we would at least see a retracement lower today. And as we can see here, right at 9:30, we formed a breaker block, right? High, low, higher, high, lower, low right here. On 9:31, we actually formed the breaker block. And then on 9:32, we retraced into our inversion fair value gap that gave you a unicorn. That's your entry. Love the indicator, just counts for you. Now, your stop loss in this case would be at that high with the SMT. Why, you may ask? Just because we don't have 3 PD arrays and this doesn't overlap in, right? So you have the inversion fair value gap, you have the order block here, and then the fair value gap here. So your stop is all the way up here. But even if you want to discard this order block and say, this is my fair value gap, well, you still have a swing point in the way. So this is the only valid stop in this case, which means that this was quite a lower R trade, if we can say. But for me, there is no valid take profit here before London, except perhaps you could justify taking a partial at the low form from the news. That is definitely justifiable and provides enough risk to reward. So we could frame this as a partial objective for sure. Yeah, it would be unfair to say anything else. But whenever I have statistical confluence, especially with London, which is an over 75% percentage probability, sorry, what did I say percent? But an over 75% probability of being hit on any given day, that is very straightforward for me. That is 2.7 R, one shot, one kill. Instead of taking a partial, I'll gladly go break even right here. But as you can see on the same candle, we met with the news low, right? The data low and our London low. So a very straightforward trade. First trade available in the day. You had to be quick on the trigger, right? Only had one candle to enter, but that shouldn't be an issue. And then you have a beautiful trade, beautiful framework lower. Now you may ask me, okay, well, can you consider anything else? Can you consider taking a long here? No, because everything in my bias tells me that we have to go lower. So I'm considering shorts. Would you take this short continuation here? Sure, but why the fuck were you not just in this one? And I mean, you could tell me, oh, well, I got broken even and now I'm looking for more. Okay, sure. This is something you could perhaps justify. And now in that case, taking the following setup here is definitely something I consider. Having your stop, in this case, you don't have 3 PD arrays. You only have fair value gap and order block. So your stop would be at the invalidation point of the breaker. I mean, taking this continuation is great. I have nothing wrong to say about it. And I mean, you do have equal lows at the bottom of this, which gives you just a great objective overall. You have a lot of targets throughout the day, along with relative equal lows at current low of day. I mean, sure, okay. I'm pissed to accept it, but yes, this continuation trade actually makes a lot of sense. You just had a retracement beforehand. And if you guys like OTE, you will definitely love this retracement because that's like straight at OTE. If you're unfamiliar with OTE, it is a concept by ICT. Basically, it is a fib retracement of specific levels, right? Between 0.62 and 0.79, specifically usually used at midnight open with the current day's range when you're looking for a trending continuation, right? So let's say throughout the day, right before New York, we've moved higher. At New York, you'd look for retracement to OTE and then continuation. So something like this. In case you guys were unfamiliar, right? I rarely use them. I use them when I'm looking for deep retracements into ranges. The body of the daily candle had closed above the previous week high. Would you have looked long for the next few days? 100%, right? As I said in the weekly outlook, if I'm looking at daily levels, right, levels on my daily chart, I need a daily closer, right? That's why I went into so much detail during this week's outlook, because I really wanted to share that aspect with you guys, because just taking it out and then trading above doesn't mean I'm going to be still bullish after taking out this higher time frame target. Your chart, right, your daily candle needs time to close. So I'm going to be bearish for that whole day. And that might mean that I'm wrong for that whole day. And that will mean that 2 to 2.5 are lost that day. Okay, so what? If I was just going long, it would be the same outcome, but I'd lose more often. I really just play around with data, guys. That's really the only way I trade. I know that if we take out a key objective on that day, I'm better to trade the retracement than the continuation higher, especially when I have additional confluences. But if we close above, then I expect a continuation in the next day. And if we close below, I'll expect a continuation lower. And now you may ask, why would you not trade that long? Because I'm bearish. Bearish, bearish, trading aggressively above the daily open, but displaying signs of going lower. I want to return to that level. And there's no reason why I should not return to that level. I mean, anyways, I think that at this point is when ES took out its current day's low. So from that point on, you'd be done for the day. I mean, there's SMT at the lows. I mean, could you justify this long? Perhaps if you were bullish, but to me, being bullish today would have been a mistake. So it's hard for me to even consider trades like these. Like, I'd much rather you try and short a lunch rate framework, right? From lunch high to lunch low, especially when there's SMT on it. Well, I mean, there's SMT on both sides, actually. Oh, no, it should be using the noon to 1:30 range because no objective has been met during lunch. There we go. Was on the wrong settings. But there is SMT on the highs, as we can see right here, right? So I would much rather look for a short continuation once again here. Also, some SMT here, right? Oh, no. NASDAQ did not reach that. My mistake. So really just SMT at lunch high. And if we look at this, there's a lot of breakers here. But in this case, this is a bearish framework, right? So as soon as you take out lunch high, you're looking for short. So I'm just going to use bearish breakers, try and simplify things. Right here is when a breaker was formed. So this was actually, wait, no, because this is not yet an inversion fair value gap. So this was actually a valid entry and your stop would be up here. So you would have first gotten stopped out. I feel like it always happened with lunch frameworks. Like you get your first entry, you get stopped out, and then you see a second entry and you're like, damn, that one worked out great. Right, so fair value gap, inversion. So you actually would have that stop just at the high of that fair value gap. And once again, lunch rates showing off. They are less consistent than whichever AM frameworks I use, but they pay. They pay a lot more on average, right? My average for morning trades is 3.42. My average for PM trades is 8 point something. I'm not going to lie, I don't remember. In case you guys wanted actual numbers, the numbers I just outlined are risk to reward. So usually during lunch, I get after lunch, So during the PM session, I get way tighter stop loss for quite sizable moves when in relation to the lunch framework. Definitely a very nice short in the PM session. But to me,
there is still only one trade you should be looking to take on a day like this, and it's that first one. And to be one and done is a big thing for me. But see, if you traded everything, you would have had win, win, loss, win. And let's say you took this random log that I don't want to discuss on. Let's just add another loss. So 3 wins, 2 losses. Ending up with the first trade covering even more than your 2 losses. So, I mean, if you want to make the most amount of money, trade the whole day, every day. But be ready to go through drawdowns. Be ready to have a smaller consistency if you're looking for those big returns. For me, I'm looking for that win rate. That is what I like. And so trading like this just makes my goals come to reality. Do we have any additional questions? And of course, right, you could hold a runner here. Definitely would close everything at daily open because it's a little hard to hold a short when ES has already met its main objective, right? Current low of day. And with such divergence, but after seeing this move lower from lunch, you could definitely consider that price could at least try and reach for these levels. So definitely some very nice opportunities here. New York basically just offered us shorts, and any long would have been, maybe you would have reached a partial, perhaps, but they would have been a lot harder to be in. Any questions? I mean, I feel like it is a pretty packed day, right? There were a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, a lot of different setups. Truth is, if you held the first one, you would have gotten a stop break even, then perhaps enter on the next one, and then you can just hold that throughout the day. But yeah, morning was pretty high resistance on NASDAQ compared to ES. So it would have been very hard to enter in the morning and then hold throughout the day. But if you did on ES, then it would have been fine. I think I told you guys at the beginning of the summer that during the summer months, NASDAQ tends to be higher resistance, so I tend to want to focus on ES a lot more. I noticed that very intensely last year, and that's why I decided to make that change. But I'm trading both right now. Like today, I did not trade ES. I wish I did, but I did not. Are you still looking for bearish rest of the week, even without SMT and Tariq at the top? Not necessarily. It's way too early to speak on the week, I'm going to be honest. Because just tomorrow, like even with a weak close like this, we could still fully reverse, right? So tomorrow's going to be a big one for me, but I'm definitely looking for previous week low to be met on ES, at least. And I would love to see it met on NASDAQ as well, because we formed these equal lows. This is not price action you want to leave and then keep going higher, right? This is also something we discussed in the weekly outlook of like, if we just keep going up without taking at least this level, we're going to have high resistance to the upside, right? I think I saw someone in general talking to me about how we discussed that during this week's outlook. So that's definitely not what I'm looking for. I want to see a retracement lower. We need a retracement lower. We don't need to go all the way down here, but I want to see previous week low taken this week for me to even consider having a bullish August and bullish end of July. Hopefully that makes sense. But short term, who knows? We could definitely go on, trade to a tiny bit lower, and then expand aggressively tomorrow. I mean, look, that's why I trade New York. That's the truth. Having the insight from what happened on the previous sessions and throughout the day with the current day structure just gives me a huge advantage that I couldn't have if I was trading Asia. And of course, trading London, people like it. I personally do not. I think that it is a little too, not consistent enough, at least with my way of trading. So basically, I really didn't answer your question. I said a bunch of stuff that really meant it could go both ways. But here are my targets to the bottom. And to the upside, I mean, there are no objectives, but I'm going to always be looking at previous day high, previous day low, of course. Hopefully that makes some sense, Justin. Any other questions before we call it a night right here? I mean, we've managed almost to keep it under 20 minutes. We're going to be at like 20, 21 minutes, which is pretty fucking great. I want to make these videos easy to rewatch. right? A 40-minute video, nobody wants to watch this. 20 minutes, that's a little easier to go through. Put it into 1.5x and all of a sudden, 15 minutes sounds a lot better. Nice, quick, awesome. Thank you for the feedback, Vito. On that note, I'm going to wish you all a great night. We're going to call it here. See you all tomorrow for another price action review, and good luck trading tomorrow. Bye, guys.